Yeah, so it's just fundamentally the idea that if you have your sort of client-side anti-cheat of the idea of you're going to catch it on somebody's machine, a script being ran, if you have it in the user space, then that makes it to where scripts can run at a higher level to where the client-side anti-cheat has no way of detecting it. So the idea is that it's an arms race, and if you put your anti-cheat on the kernel level, which is hypothetically the lowest level that you could get to, it makes it to where there's an even playing field and even battleground to where the anti-cheats can actually keep up with the cheats.
Yasuke, explain what kernel level is as well for people, because we gotta start at the bare bones here.
Yes, yes. So there's multiple different levels of access that your computer has. Most programs run at the user base, which is where most things kind of happen. Is where programs work, and then you have layers of lower of like admin access, and then the lowest layer is the kernel layer, which is even above admin access, to where uh, it's essentially where a lot of the really intense stuff
It's where
happens
your
on your
operating
computer.
system runs.
Yes, where
Yeah.
your operating system runs. There's actually technically a -0, which you can run cheats that are inside of Windows drivers, which is like a lower level, but that's not necessarily related to sort of the kernel level. And so it's where Windows and stuff operates, and it is uh, it's a place to where when the cheats are running there, it's a lot harder to detect.
You have anything to add on to that, Richard?
No, it's a very succinct summary. The only thing I would add is that I will say that there's a lot of kind of misconceptions around just how effective kernel level anti cheats actually are, and
Yes.
and in fact, if you actually do even some sort of cursory googling, you will find bypasses to these systems. And we had kernel level anti cheats in the past. It's not exactly new tech, even though it's all the rage to talk about it now. We've had anti cheats in CS. That operate on the kernel level, and ultimately those have been bypassed, and we're talking a long time ago. So it's this. What I have noticed in the industry, a big change lately, is anti-cheat seems to be big business in the sense that it is worth talking about as a company, whereas the prescribed wisdom 10 years ago was you didn't talk about it. It was just something you did. You never mentioned it. It was there. You never published your numbers, your findings, your thoughts, your methods, because doing so might give cheaters an advantage. So they never talked about it. You fast forward now, you've got for the last few years Ubisoft with Rainbow Six. They announce changes in development to their anti-cheat at their major events. They bring out the developer onto the desk to talk about it. And so we're in a very different field. But with that obviously comes the reality of, if you're using, kernel level as a marketing label, then obviously people are going to lie about its capabilities and its weaknesses because you want to make it sound amazing. And it's my belief that Riot is certainly guilty of that.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely. One of the biggest examples that you could give, which will go into like kind of dissecting the dev post that they made when they were originally instituting Vanguard, they talked about how they manually audited challenger games at a regular cadence. Yet there were scripters who were unapologetically scripting at high challenger levels who were unbanned for a year and a half, and grandmasters plus players who had 3 years of not getting any permabans. And
So
so
And I think this is also something that you can talk to specifically, Yasuke, as somebody who is a very high elo player, is like, how hard do you think it would be to manually police the high elo ladder on servers? Because basically, the argument when Riot made a blog post, which we'll put below, called it was like slash dev Vanguard and LoL, talking about Vanguard coming to League, is that high elo was having a significant uptick in terms of scripters and other cheaters. And so for you, how hard do you think it would be for Riot to actually just manually review high elo, which would probably remove many of these problems?
So before I get into that, there's a big misconception that Riot does like to play into, is the idea that the data breach had a significant impact in the amount of scripting that was present. As somebody who's playing in these Grandmasters Challenger games, the uptick in scripting to where you would see them at a very high rate happened in 2021, 2022, before any data breach happened. And it's really convenient that they're playing into the idea that, oh, we have to do this because the data breach was there. And to directly answer your question, there are not many games that are going on in Challenger. And you even have pro players, you even have high elo players reporting these people directly. And you can have direct sources to Riot to where they don't need to look at every single game. You could legitimately have a single person monitoring high elo. Like there's been times where Vanguard V2, a league creator,
he's a Cloud9 analyst, by the way. He works with Cloud9, the professional team.
Yes, he'll just post threads of everybody who's like very blatantly, unapologetically scripting. And all you would have to do is have somebody at Riot look at his tweet threads and then ban those people. It's not a very complicated thing to monitor high elo, but they've let the problem fester. And there's this concept called like problem reaction solution, to where if you create a problem and then you let a reaction of fear propagate, then you have a lot of people demanding that you give the solution that you created the problem for.
Yeah, by the way, two things to say. One is, if people don't know, you could go watch, there was this Ven clip the other day. There are still like 25-minute queues on the NA solo queue. So it's not like they're playing a million games like Korean solo queue. And
there's
then
like
also,
one or two Challenger games happening at any given point in time.
And so the difference is what we're conflating here, which is also why every moron's like, just give them total access to your PC and then your brain via neural link connection. Like they think that there's an answer, like Richard said, that's going to block every cheater. Whereas we're already talking about the difference between like private high-level cheats that might be expensive and random shitters who Google, how do I cheat in League of Legends, and then buy something for like $4 that may or may not work. Like the difference is massive. So on the one of like actually manually removing people, the dumbest thing about League is exactly what he just said. Like in CS, if a really great cheater is impossible to catch. That's why I think one of the greatest players of all time did it. Because it looks the same as being fucking super smart in a clutch. You don't use your fucking in-aim lock on them. You don't do a 180 kill that's impossible. You just use it to like know a guy's behind that corner and then still play the round out without looking at him and just know he's there. Like it's just extra information. The difference is, like Yaska says, most of the scripting we're talking about is literally they are doing like Neo from the Matrix level moves within the game of League of Legends. Like I could already myself as a layman tell you almost every scripter, because the joke of League of Legends is it's actually an incredibly hard game to be super smooth mechanically in. Even mega stud people like Chovy and Jackie Love often like miss an auto, don't perfectly like go from one ability to another. They make basic mistakes. So when you see some of the people that are just on NA solo queue, like he's saying, where like the most famous example ever was that one on Korean solo queue back in the day where Faker actually played against a guy who was on Carthus who was scripting, and the guy essentially just never ever missed a single Carthus queue ever. And so like if you saw that, no player ever to play that champion has ever done that. Like it's not even vaguely plausible. So the dumbest thing about this exact one is that one's the easiest to get rid of. You could just absolutely on eye test ban those people. I don't know how they'd possibly have an excuse for what they're doing, or like what they're just secretly the fucking Kwisatz Haderach of League of Legends. I don't think so. Just some random guy on any solo queue. And also, like he says, the other thing you also tend to get is when you intentionally abandon a whole scene and don't ever police it, people won't just do it like, lol, maybe I am, maybe I aren't. They'll just sort of be like, well, fuck you, I'm doing it. What are you going to do about it? Like, that's what's so weird is people will brazenly do it. So I sort of agree with Yaska. This almost looks to me like you intentionally let, like, NA Ladder, for example, go to shit. So that then, like he says, the only solution is everyone goes, please, just give us a kernel level anti-cheat. Which, as Richard knows, every fan, for some reason, thinks just... They think it's like one of those ads from the 90s for like disinfectant, like kills 99.9% of cheaters. Like it just doesn't know. It doesn't even vaguely. But the dumbest thing is private cheats probably still won't get detected, you know.
You know that meme where you've got like a fucking, barbarian with his eyes super far apart here, and then a Jedi here, and they're both saying the same dumb thing, and it's the normie in the middle that actually has the wisdom. You know what I'm talking about? That's kernel level anti-cheat. because whenever the topic comes up, the grognack down here goes, Kernel level anti-cheat will solve everything, and so just install it, lol. And the Jedi, the super intelligent person up here goes, well, you may as well install a kernel level anti-cheat, because if you run an executable file on your computer, the same company can do anything. By installing League of Legends, Riot can access all your shit, so why don't you just install it, lol? And then in the middle, there's the normie going, yeah, this sounds a bit fucking much just to play a video game, guys. Like, you know, total real-time access to my computer all the time, regardless of whether or not I'm playing your game. No. Anyone that agrees to that just to play shitty 2009 Babby's first MOBA is a deeply unserious person. Let's just fucking set the table correctly.
It's also, Richard, that, you know, obviously the people on this show are going to be more concerned about this than other people because, for example, I have been the subject of Riot investigations, and I don't know, had this existed back in the day, if they would have used this to surveil me or not.
Well, I mean, put it this way, I found it very strange that the only time I've ever had anything that looked like a hack, where somebody accessed my email, shut me out of my emails temporarily, then I could get back into my emails as if nothing had happened. The computer I was on, like, gone, shut down. I couldn't get on it. It was like surreal. It was like a scene out of a movie. The only time that's ever happened is when I was doing a report on Riot Games. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not making any allegations, but that's pretty fucking weird. Yeah, pretty weird.
Yeah, we have, you know, both Richard and Thorin are investigative reporters who have done pieces on Riot. Plus, we also know, you know, I talked about the Riot Lite stuff earlier, and Richard can briefly expound upon this. But basically, you know, Riot Lite came in the early days and basically was saying, we are going to stop player toxicity and we're on a mission to make the human race better. And it turned out he privately was a giant piece of shit, but he was running psychological experiments on the League player base without people knowing. Richard, you want to talk about this? This is also why it's disturbing that they could have access.
Yeah. So just briefly about Riot Lite, because you know, I mean, somewhat terrifyingly, after Riot, he ended up working at Facebook. So I mean, that's just fucking way worse. But you know, anyway, basically, he was a guy that Mark Merrill and Brandon Beck met when they'd secured funding for League of Legends, you know, from Tencent, and basically they knew they needed an extra gimmick. The freemium model wasn't going to be enough, so one of the things they actively marketed against was, hey, Dota really sucks for toxicity. Now, anyone who played the original Dota back when it was a fucking mod, and you had to, you know, someone had to host. Right, and you had to get your game, the Warcraft 3 version. You had someone had to host, you had to connect, you had to do it all through IRC, get your games from private channels. Basically, you simply never finished a game. If the host died 3 times and couldn't get back in the game, they'd just disconnect. The game was over for anyone. People used to rage quit all the time. You had to ban people. So League of Legends actively marketed their game as being an antidote to toxicity, and so they went very hard into the idea of having somebody create systems and models within the game that would stop some of these negative behaviors. And the reason anyone uses the word toxicity now in our industry is because of Riot. They went on a massive tour. They went all the games development stuff. Light got up there and explained what toxicity is. Now, by the way, I have no problem with the original model. It's just that, like everything on the internet, morons saw this word being used and then use it out of context, divorced from its original meaning, and we're just stuck in it's just a buzzword. It's just a meaningless, empty buzzword now. But he explained toxicity as a principle of, you know, basically, if you encounter someone behaving negatively over time, you'll behave negatively because you get fed up with it. And so, like toxicity, it spreads through the server, creating a negative environment, and that's why you have to nip it in the bud. The problem with Light was he was a megalomaniac, and so what he wanted to do was cure the human race. Now, when I was doing my own investigation into him, which no one was brave enough to publish, but, you know, I know what I found. I know what rocks I turned over. Basically, it turned out he had like the villain origin story, which was he'd been bullied horrifically at school and in his teen years and even his early adulthood, adolescence, whatever you want to call it. He and it was just very much on his mind that like now I'm in charge. Now I get to fight back the bullies. Want to play my video game? Yeah, well, we'll see. And so he was doing shit like that, and that's why we ended up with, again, this to me feels awful close to data protection violations. He used to do these things called the light smite, which was people would complain publicly, I've been banned for no reason. Light would just turn up in a Reddit thread going, well, here's your chat logs. What up now? And what? You're publishing my fucking chat logs that you have access to. So another reason, by the way, maybe this kernel level anti-cheat not a good idea, but he would do that, and then as Monty rightly said, ended up doing lots of very weird, controlling, manipulative stuff to people in his private life that ultimately led to him being quietly
over
on
social media as well. So what happened was he basically was accused. He had a fiance and he cheated on his fiance, and there was a lot of really weird stuff that came out on that one, allegations against him about how controlling he was in these relationships and the multiple women like speaking up publicly. So you guys can look into that. But basically, it was like, this guy's a giant hypocrite. He is the one advocating for good behavior, yet his private life is deeply disturbing. And he's the one who has access to all of this. So the problem with Riot is that we know as a company that they have encouraged this cult atmosphere. We know they are individual bad actors from their history. We know that they actually just basically incubated a culture that was so misogynistic that the state of California had to step in and fine them $100 million. And because no one was fired, these people are still there. And these are the people who are in control of Vanguard. And then on top of that, I will add some extra context. So 2 years ago in 2021, so Tencent, who owns Riot, is a publicly traded company. However, they are still in the thrall of the Chinese government. And 2 years ago, Xi Jinping, who's the premier of China, instituted a model of common prosperity. You guys can look this up, where basically he strong-armed companies like Alibaba and Tencent into providing significant funds to his campaigns to redistribute wealth in China. So what happened is that a publicly traded company basically went against shareholder wishes to give, and I truly, $7 billion to the Chinese, to efforts guided by the Chinese government to like increase tech in rural areas and do a bunch of other shit. Now, even more recently, what is very interesting is that the Chinese government has started taking what are called golden shares in publicly traded companies. And they just did this with Alibaba and Tencent at the end of last year, or actually at the beginning of 2023, excuse me. So about a year ago. And what the golden shares do is they take over a small percent of the company. They did this with ByteDance that owns TikTok, which is probably, it's a big part of the reason why the US government is trying to move to have TikTok sold in America, because this is very disturbing. The golden shares are basically a special management share that are about 1% of the company. But what it does is it, at least in ByteDance's case, it allowed the Chinese government to put party members onto the board of these companies. And while they can technically be outvoted, for example, in ByteDance's case, the party member that's on ByteDance's board was given special authority to dictate the content guidelines of the version of TikTok in China. So basically, it allowed the Chinese party to directly control the content policies of the Chinese iteration of TikTok.
Yep.
So this is all really important because Tencent owns Riot, and we don't actually know, what the effects of these golden shares are going to be. It's clear they have a lot of control over the company and where this data is potentially going. Yes, Yasuke?
I was just going to say as well, just to add on at the end of that, sorry to cut you off. It's worth knowing that if we had more tech-savvy American politicians, all the arguments they were making about TikTok could equally be applied to Vanguard. And, we've seen what legislation they've passed in regards to that. It would be functionally the same. Sorry, Yaz.
No, you're good. And to talk about sort of Chinese policies and Chinese laws, there is the National Intelligence Law of China, where essentially Riot, through Tencent, Chinese-owned company, at any point, the Chinese government can ask for basically any data they want from Riot, and they are legally obligated to lie about it. So Riot has to lie about the capabilities of Vanguard and what it does and what type of data is being scoured from Vanguard, because they would be violating Chinese law, and then they would be violating US and GDPR laws through if they were actually honest about this.
What's brilliant about that, of course, is that's just their version of that bullshit from every Hollywood movie of like, it's a national security concern. Just don't tell anyone about that. So, like, that's obviously something that exists anyway. No, the other thing as well is this. Here's the most obvious reason why Riot are just fucking cretins when it comes to this topic. Because do you know what would be a really great guide as to whether I could trust them with kernel level access to my PC? How they responded to problems with the kernel level access to my PC that they got. So if they, for example, repeatedly lied and gaslit everyone that nobody's PC was having a problem as a result of this particular kernel level anti-cheat, and then in collaboration with Reddit mods just suppressed all discussion of the topic and outright deleted hundreds and hundreds of comments or banned people, etc., then at that point in time I wouldn't really be sort of inclined to trust these people, because at the end of the day, if I'm giving them the most important access to my PC, trust would be an essential component of that relationship. As Richard said, the fact I get to play bad Dota isn't really enough of a fucking upsell for me.
And it's important to not differentiate the anti-cheat team at Riot from other teams at Riot, because they all act like a monolith. The same behaviors that you see on the esports side, if you only follow the esport, is the same stuff that happens in the game, is the same stuff that happens with the balance, is the same stuff that happens with the anti-cheat. There is no differentiation. So with the consistent behavior that Riot has to lie and manipulate about the way that they show the perception of things, it's really hard to justify giving Riot this kind of access.
Yeah, and I want to add as well, the thing that's really annoyed me in all of this is they repeat this phrase in all of their writing, in all of their videos. It's this phrase, and they say, "We will only take data that we require to improve your game." Right? That's it. They will sometimes add some, preamble and say, it's actually a problem for us to host all this data, so we wouldn't want to do it because, we could be held liable if we were ever found out. Yeah, that didn't stop Meta or, Netflix or all these, Insta, all these other companies that have been caught abusing your data. I mean, fucking hell, like, you have a conversation in a room with a mobile phone in it and you're getting fucking advertised that shit the next day. Everyone's fucking you on that. But anyway, but when you go to their terms of service and you look at what information they actually collect, they are full of shit when they say we only collect information that we need to improve your game. So, for example, this is their categories of personal info collected and disclosed. It includes identifiers such as your name, your in-game name, your username, your email address, billing address, telephone number, IP address, any unique device ID, and other online identifiers. It also takes your date of birth, your age, your gender, and if you have any accessibility-related health info. It also takes every interaction you've ever had with Riot services, including all your payment methods and all your payment information. It also can get internet data from which it says, including use of Riot services, which are timestamps, the number of clicks you make, how fast you scroll, the browsing times, heat maps, any searches or referrals you make, as well as any activity or interaction with the game client, which includes all chat logs. Also includes your computer or device, its processing capabilities, manufacturer and model, language and regional settings, screen resolution and other gameplay settings, and your ISP connection, and its strength and capabilities, and how Riot services perform on your PC, including loading advertisements and analytics. It also takes your geolocation data, and it also says here we take audio, electronic, visual, thermal, olfactory, or other information, including I don't know. Yeah, that's literally in it. I don't even know, because trust me, homie, the average League player don't smell too clean, so I don't even know why you want that shit, but whatever. And it says it includes audio and text chat, recorded gameplay, and related info. It also collates other information, including survey data, including your preferences, interests, general demographics, hobbies, and your other favorite games. It also monitors consumer preferences, whatever they are, and it can even go on other third-party websites like Facebook and get your friends list. So why, I ask you, do they need all that to simply improve your game? And the answer is they don't. And the answer, and the other thing to be mindful of is every time they say we only take data to improve your game, that is the totality of the scope they are talking about. And therefore, I do not think it is unreasonable to say they are fucking liars as always.
Yeah, so when they say that they're not taking any more data than they used to, they are already taking everything. So what else is there left to take?
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, that was also one of the most annoying things about the discourse around this is I've noticed there's a type of person online who has no point of their own. All they do is just go, if I was to take some sort of really contrived devil's advocate position, I might seem like I had a unique take. And so the unique take is the classic celebration paradox, isn't it? Which goes, it isn't happening. If it was happening, then it'd be like this. Oh, but it actually is happening. It was always happening. And it's a good thing that's happening. So it's like, well, which is it then? Which is it? Because that's what they keep doing. I know it triggers you, Richard, where it's like, well, they've always had access to everything. It's like, well, then that sounds really bad. We should probably get rid of it. No, but they did. So then there's no problem now, is there? It's like, it's such a weird way of framing it because I don't understand. I still don't get for real what their point is. Like, are they against it or not? Because that sounds like they're against it. But
the bottom line
is good.
It's the motherload if you're League of Legends, because ultimately you have a bunch of socially inept, typically teenagers. I'll say typically socially inept as well. I have met some people in League that are capable of socializing, not many. But and all they want to do is just play the game. And they don't care what barrier to entry you put there. They're going through the door anyway. And this is the thing a lot of games developers are increasingly aware of, that you can get away with things. And this is this is a broader topic. We'll dial back into the specificity of Vanguard in a moment, no doubt. But this is what all games companies are doing right now. What will you tolerate just to have your little dopamine dosage that they eke out to you like it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? And it turns out the average player will put up with anything. They'll put up with broken games. They'll put up with bullshit fucking multi-layers of pre-order. They'll put up with people paying more to get early access. They'll put up with pay to win. Sorry, I'm being called on phone that I didn't even know was on. Sorry, I was like, what the fuck is that? I'm in the middle of a rant here. So that's one of my burner phones. That's like the source desperately trying to contact me. Or Riot have got my number. Who knows? Anyway. Yeah, so anyway, you'll put up with 3 different types of currency. You'll put up with battle passes. You'll put up with loot crates. And when they ban them, they just reban them to, crates of loot. And we're back going through the whole fucking rigmarole in Europe. And it's like, gamers will just put up with any old shit. And then it'll be something really silly they'll take the stand over, like, you put a bra on her? My favorite character? But I loved her booba. And then they'll protest. And then they'll boycott. You know what I mean? But like, games developers have been fucking sticking it up your ass for years. And this is no different. This kernel level anti-cheat desire is exactly what Yaz said at the start. It is predicated on fear-mongering. You create this problem, you tell the audience it's bigger than what it is, and like you say, the average gamer is like, oh, but the only reason I'm bad in my pubs is because the cheaters are stopping me. If I install Vanguard, I will surely climb MMR. No, you won't, dickhead. No, you won't. right? It's all in your mind. The average, particularly in League, I don't even buy their own numbers. Like they said, 1 in 15 games as a scripter. Like
Yeah,
I don't
so-
even know how accurate that is.
Yeah.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.